Hello Tarot fans, welcome to another edition of Blue Sicx Tarot. I'm your fantastic host Blue Sicx. Thank you very much for watching. Yes, it has been quite a while since my last video. Unfortunately, life gets in the way and there have been some other kind of focuses. Man, that joke was funny. Yeah, that thing. Anyway, moving on. Yes, we shall be doing a fun review. Not done one of those for a while. And once again, if you do enjoy this video, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. And follow me on the social medias. Link down in the description. I don't know why I whispered that. I kind of ad-libbed this as I go along. So without further ado, roll on those intros. Man, I've missed saying that. What was so funny? So today we are going to take a look at the Dragon Tarot. Now this one I've seen around for quite a few years. Never really decided to pick it up. I'm not as big a fan of the artwork, and this deck does tend to kind of do its own thing in regards to the art. On the cover here we have the Fool. And on the back we have the Ace of Wands. Now they do tend to have a lot of crystals in this as well. Although the artwork has a kind of very late 70s, early 80s vibe, the copyright itself is from around the mid 90s. So I always think it's kind of cool. And of course here you can see the elements of air as the triangle. Yeah, this is kind of an old box. It's a pre-loved deck. I picked this up in Camden in London a few weeks back. Never really got round, haven't really started using them yet, but I'm not quite sure if I kind of gel with them, but we'll take a look at the deck and we'll see where it takes us. So the book that comes with this particular deck is quite thin, so it only really comes in the one language, in this regard English. There doesn't appear to be anything that shows any particular spreads, although we'll quickly run to the back. So we've got I'll take that back, we do have the Celtic Cross, kind of a classic, but that does really appear to be it. Not really much going on with the book itself, but also brought to us by US Game System Inc., who also do like to do reprints of some of their older decks. So if this deck might not necessarily be available from their main site, although I did check earlier, so this deck should still be available from their main website for about $21 or £15 to £20 depending on where you go. Although I did pick it up second hand. In fact, the woman actually asked me what sort of price I would think would be good, so I think I paid about £8, maybe £10. It was a little while ago. Anyway, moving on from that, and we'll go straight on to the cards themselves. Okay, so first thing, we'll take a look at the back. So there's some really cool dragon patterns here. Nice blue dragon here. I always like the symmetrical back, so you can't really tell if they're inverted or not. But as I said, I don't really do inverted readings, so but I still think this looks quite good if you're the sort of person who does. Now the card stock itself is quite thick, so I always like to compare them to the Scarabeo, as I have quite a lot of those. So it's slightly thicker than the Scarabeo, and it has has a nice little gloss to them. So they don't really feel sticky. So they do feel quite smooth. So they do spread quite smoothly, and the shuffling is quite lovely as well. So we're going to take a look at the mages, starting with the Fool. Now, so at the bottom we'd have the element and the planet they are associated with. I'm a bit rusty with my planetary symbols, but I believe that's Neptune. So of course at the side here we've got the copyright of 95 US Toys and Games here, which memory serves, a lot of the US game system tend to do that, which is always handy. But yeah, so the artwork overall with this deck is quite dark. So with this we've got the Fool. So instead of having the standard kind of like dog or puppy following them behind, they've still kind of got a jester look to them. So you've got the playing cards at the top there, one of each suit, bubbles, which I think looks quite cool. And the pattern of the dragon has a kind of, makes it a harlequin sort of design to it, which is quite nice. And the fact that they are holding a dice in one hand, one at the floor here, and carrying one of those little sticks. Just zoom in a little more. Yeah, so they've got that nice little kind of court jester stick there. So it is still reminiscent of a journey, although they've also got like a small harp at the bottom as well to kind of illustrate, once again, more of the jester sort of thing, but still with the dice has a kind of chaos sort of thing going on. But this dragon is definitely on a journey. So next up we have the magician. Now the magician I quite like, in the fact they've still got all their different paraphernalia from the other suits, and with the infinity symbol, and also a tower in the background. With, oh no, it's not a tower in the background. So something with a nice crystal ball on top. Just the fact that they've got all the stuff around, I still think looks quite nice. Not necessarily anything dramatically different, but it's still one of the nicer ones. Next we have the Hierophant. Now I very rarely show the Hierophant in a lot of the reviews, but this one I thought was quite interesting in the fact that they have another dragon down here as a puppet, which I think is kind of an interesting take. And of course on the back you have these six-pointed star, which is often seen as the Star of David. But yeah, this one has a very kind of negative view in regards to the Hierophant, in the fact that it's kind of implying a lot of control with this little kind of puppet. I think it's quite interesting. The pillars around the sides are quite nice, and this little decoration at the top. His helmet also looks kind of interesting as well, with 3 circles, symbols in the middle there, and also a scepter that looks like it has the moon and the earth. So that's also quite interesting, and also the fact that the background's also stained glass. So next we have the tower. Now I put this one in because the tower is always a very unpleasant card. But what I liked about this is the fact that this dragon has just curled itself around the tower. So it's not just attacked it, it's just taking its time with it. And you've still got like the lightning in the background there, but just the fact that the dragon is making a concerted effort to collapse the tower and say, well, I don't care, it's just something I want to do. So it feels like more of a force of nature, not necessarily random though, because there's an, granted it chose to do it, but it did it with an intention, and that has a very kind of strong feeling for me there. And the last court card we take a look is Judgment. Of course, next week I'll be doing a full flip through of this deck, so to show off the entire deck itself. But this one I thought was interesting in the fact that this is what looks more like a 3-headed dragon coming out of the grave, which is pretty cool. Once again, a lot of lightning, a lot of dark fantasy feel to it. There's a nice little anvil at the bottom there. But I think I believe it's King Ghidorah that has the 3-headed dragon. I think it's King Ghidorah. Yeah, I think there's a 3-headed dragon, which is pretty cool. Throughout this deck, a lot of the dragons are just kind of how I personally feel about them, really. So next we have the Ace of Cups. And so basically, there's nothing with aces. I always find it tricky to talk about them because they don't tend to have a lot of set meaning when it comes to their art design, because that can just vary from just a single object to a nice little design around it. But the fact you've got this dragon at the background with a scepter in one hand and what looks like a sage and little seahorse in that one there. So one of the cards is actually a seahorse, so I think it's quite nice. So you've still got the kind of diamond in the background there as well. So next we have the Ace of Wands, which we saw on the back of the card. So this is a lot busier than the previous because it's a dragon in a laboratory of some description, where you're doing something alchemical. Nice bit of philosophizing there. But so it's obviously just doing a lot of chemistry. This is the thinking person's card, as it were. So they're doing a science. Yeah, and you've got the Ursa Minor in the background there. Yeah, this is a very, very kind of laboratorial sort of card, which is very different to how you usually see the Ace of Wands. So next we've got the Ace of Swords, which would make a great foam background, great tattoo, a nice design on the side of a person's hippie van, all that good stuff. Now once again, granted there's not a lot there, there's still a lot happening. It's still quite visually busy. You've still got the bubbles, you've got the rainbow, the kind of design of the dragon and how it's curling around the sword as well. It is a pretty busy card despite how immediately sparse it looks. At last we take a look at the Ace of Coins. Now once again this one is not as visually specific in the sort of message it wants to give. It's just a dragon sitting there chilling by a cave. And this is always so when you do interpretive reading, when it comes to aces, people do struggle with aces, as indeed I do. So this one is one of the trickier ones to kind of do an interpretive reading on, but still, it doesn't seem as visually striking as some of the others. So I'm going to take a look at what the suits. Oh no, that's not correct at all. There we go. I'll let it set that out and post. Might as well zoom out just a little bit. Right, so next we have the Two of Coins. Now, this one has more of a Two of Cups sort of feel to it, in the fact that you've got two dragons. They're still in that position where one pentacle is high. Well, one pentacle is higher than the other in each dragon's hand and in the card itself. Now, as I said earlier, with the ace, this still feels a bit like there's not a lot going on in the card. There's a lot of tree roots and branches, but not a lot else happening in it. So it does feel like a very plain sort of card when it comes to this one. But as I said, you still have the symbols at the bottom there, the symbol of Earth. So next we have the Eight of Swords. Now I chose this one out of the group because this one does still have the classic feel. So granted, though the dragon themselves aren't bound, they are still blindfolded and appear to be confined by the swords. Granted, the swords aren't necessarily interacting and is this more part of the general theme of the card, it still gives the appearance that the dragon is trapped within them. Next we take a look at the Eight of Wands. Now once again, as I said with the swords, the wands themselves aren't really interacting with the dragon itself. However, this has the feeling of more of the traditional Eight of Cups, where you're just getting up and moving on, whilst the Eight of Wands tends to have more of a get up and go sort of feel. However, this doesn't have that sort of energy to it. The dragon is still going somewhere with intent, but it doesn't have that feeling of immediacy. It feels like it's taking its time. The intention is there, but there's not much of a rush. So that's kind of where it feels like it varies from most Eight of Wands. And after we take a look at the Three of Cups. Now overall, it's just three dragons chilling. Once again, not really a lot happening here. They're in a storm. Well, there's lightning in the background, full moon, but they're just kind of chilling. There's not really a lot going on. Not really a lot you can say. Now, most of the deck doesn't really have the... there's a lot of other stuff that's going on with some of the other cards, but it's kind of has that background feeling rather than the main theme. So last, we take a look at the court cards. Sorry about the table wobble. Take a look at the court cards. So we're going to look at the Page of Cups, which, once again, it doesn't feel like there's a lot happening. The dragon looks like it's like studying the field and studying the pattern, which is involved with all of the coins with this nice pattern at the bottom. But there is the feeling of inquisitiveness and like study of the ground, because they're usually seen as farmers in regards to the Rider-Waite Smith. But it doesn't feel like there's a lot of anything else happening. There is a volcano in the background, but it feels very everything in here feels very subtle. Even the eye on the forehead doesn't really seem dramatic enough. Now, I'm not making a complaint that a dragon tarot should be more dramatic, but there doesn't feel to be a lot of energy going on with these. So next we take a look at the Knight of Cups. Now this one I quite like, with the how the dragon's holding the lance and got a little shield. I think that's quite cute, and it still has that kind of Knight of Cups flair to them, where they're not necessarily good at what they do, but they just like looking good at what they do. And they're still near a waterfall, as most of the Knights of Cups tend to be, but it does have that, though it's not have a great detail to it, it still has that feeling of, hey, look at me, look at how fancy I look. So next we take a look at the Queen of Wands. Now this one really stuck out to me. She looks big, she looks dramatic, she looks like someone who demands your attention, and it doesn't look like it's hard. Doesn't seem like it's a hard demand, because she has presence. It does have a nice dramatic feel to it. And at the same time, not necessarily in an overbearing sort of way. Similar to the Knight of Swords, it does feel like it's Knight of Swords or Knight of Cups. It does feel like she has a kind of flair to her, but one that's earned, rather than just having to work hard to make it look. She doesn't look like she's working hard to make it look easy. And so last we take a look at the King of Swords. Now, out of all the kings, most of the kings in this deck pretty much feel the same, but I chose this one because, once again, I'm still quite a big fan of the bubbles as a representation of air, and this nice kind of misty wisp kind of going around him there. He does feel very dramatic, but not necessarily as solemn as some of the other King of Swords tend to be. Doesn't really look like there's a lot of misery or authoritarianism with him. He does have that feeling of age by the details on his face here, but overall, he doesn't feel like he'd be because the King of Swords tends to have that kind of feeling of judge, and he doesn't feel like he would be as strict a judge. But it would be more like he would make decisions based off of his age and experience, rather than just what he believes to be the right way. So he's a king of experience rather than just like a king of authority. Some would argue that might be the same thing. But yeah, so that overall, I'd say this deck is artistically nice, but not necessarily definitely not one for beginners. It's artistically nice, but if you are an interpretive reader, it might be very tricky for you. This might be one of those things where you may have to refer to the book a lot. But overall, it's a pleasant deck. No major complaints. Just not necessarily something I gel with myself. But anyway, once again, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Follow me on the social medias. And I'll catch you all on the flip side.